for introducing me. And hello, everybody. In the early days of the World Wide Web, that prehistoric ancient history of 1993, something was missing. We had this incredible tapestry of interconnected documents, a vast universe of information just waiting to be explored. Yet it felt a bit like a library where you could only read the books, never check one out, or leave a note in the margin. The web was a one-way street. Ooh. The brilliant minds behind the web, Tim Berners-Lee and his team, had given us the foundations for a revolution. But that revolution itself was still simmering. It needed a spark. That spark came 2 years later in the form of a seemingly unassuming element, the HTML form element. With the introduction of the form element in HTML2, we could suddenly fill out an order form, send feedback to a website owner, or participate in an online discussion. Yeah, the floodgates were opened. We suddenly had a standardized way of sending data back to the server, and that act of sending data transformed the web into the vibrant, collaborative space we know today. It gave us the power to contribute, communicate, and connect with others in ways we had never imagined. The web was now a two-way street, a bustling marketplace of interactions and ideas. Yet this newfound power also brought its challenges. With the ability to communicate came the issue of moderation. How do we manage the vast amounts of information being generated and shared? And with the ability to communicate and with the ability to collaborate came the issue of validation. How do we make sure that the information that we're sending is both accurate, reliable, and trustworthy? The success history of the web is the story of the form element, that element that turned the web into the dynamic, interactive space and platform we know today, the most widely adopted application delivery platform in the world. And it's a story that's still unfolding as we continue to grapple with the questions of validation and moderation in an ever-evolving digital landscape. Hello, everybody. I'm Evyatar. I'm a software engineer at Meta. And in my free time, I work on various open source projects. Today, we're going to talk about one of them. But before that, I'll introduce you to my beautiful wife, with which I love to travel the world. And I am also the humble servant of this mighty creature. Thank you. Yeah, she deserves it. Yes. And today we're going to talk about form validation. And more specifically, when we talk about form validations, we see two kinds of form validation. We have validation on the server, which that we use to verify that the information that we're sending is safe, correct, and to make sure there are no issues to display it. And we also have validation on the client that we use for user interaction and that we use for user experience to make sure that the user is sending and having a good experience while sending everything to the server, knowing that what they send is actually okay to save. And I built a library that actually solves both of them. It's called VEST. VEST is a form validation framework that takes the syntax and style of unit testing libraries like Mocha and Jest, and it takes the expressive and declarative style and makes it much more easier to read, much more easier to write, and much more easier to maintain. And just to go back and try to see why I'm trying to solve validation for you, let's see how validation usually looks like. So this is a standard hook for managing data in a React component and managing a form. So let's say we want to add a handle change with the state for it. That's pretty standard, right? And then we want to add some validation code. So let's add a validation function. And with that validation function, obviously, we also want to validate the fields. Okay, that's adding some code. And if we want to make some more complex validations, well, yeah, that gets very gnarly very easily. Let's not. Instead, let's try to think of an alternative solution. And when we talk about form validation, we have three main problems. One is structure. We don't know where to put the code. We don't know how to write the code. We don't have a consistent syntax. We eventually make it work by somehow cramming it into the feature, but then we come to maintain it months or years later and we want to add a field, we want to modify something, and, well, that's pretty tough, right? Because we don't have that structure. So we get to disassemble everything and reassemble everything into the form. And when we come to test it, well, unfortunately for us, forms are the interactive heavy parts of our apps, which means this is where the user touches, scrolls, types, clicks. That's everything they do. And this is also where the money comes, because that's where the user content comes in, and this is where the money comes in. So tests are crucial for form validation. But when we want to do form validation, well, that's a bummer because, well, we have to simulate click event, touch event, type events. And it's very difficult to properly validate forms. And when something is hard to test, well, we end up not testing it. And when we don't test it, it breaks. And when it breaks, we don't get paid. Because, again, forms are where the money comes from. And I've been looking into the space of form validation, and I'm not the only one. As you see, there are thousands and thousands of form validation libraries on NPM because, well, that's a big problem. That's something that people deeply think about and try to solve. And I'm no different. But surely, among all these libraries, there is something that could work well for form validation. Well, let's try to see what kinds of form validation libraries we have over there. And the first one, most basic, most obvious, functional matchers. We have functions like isEmail, isNumber, longer than, and it allows us to see whether something is what we expect it to be. But it doesn't solve for structure. It doesn't solve for user interaction. So we have to have something different. And a natural extension of that, well, is schema validation, like Zod, Joy, or Yup. These allow us to check the shape of our data. But wait a minute. Users don't type in shapes. Users type in forms. When the user types in the username field, well, we don't have to validate the entire schema, and that's not how users work. We don't care about the interaction when working with schema. It's great for an API, but not necessarily for a user form. So not that. And we have something that's almost the holy grail of form validation libraries, and I don't really have a name for them. That may be State Manager for form validation libraries. We have React Form, we have Validate for View, and we have a bunch of them for all the rest. And they take a different trade-off. They take away some control by giving us components or event handlers, and then they add the validation and a form state management task to them. But, well, it's not easily portable because the code is Angular specific, React specific, and what we want to do it on Node, on a different library, on React Native, I don't know, we want to share validation code, that's one. And the second, well, if they don't support something that you need, well, you're out of luck because it's very much ingrained into your feature. So yeah, and I tried to find a different solution. And let's talk about a unit test for a second. And about 9 years ago when I started writing unit tests, I noticed this pattern. So we have a scribe that describes our feature. Inside of it, we have the different tests. And each test describes what it does and provides a callback. And in the callback, we write an assertion. We expect that something, some value, will be what we want it to be. And we can add as many as we want per feature. And this is very interesting. This is a very cool pattern. And what if we could use this pattern for something completely different? Well, let's imagine it as a form. Let's say user registration form. So I could say describe user registration and then say I want username to be required and username must be at least 3 characters. Okay, cool. And let's add our assertions, so not empty and longer than. And then let's add the data from the form. Okay, cool. And, well, I have to tell it what field I'm actually testing. Let's rename expect to enforce, because right now we're enforcing something in a validation suite. And let's rename it to vest create, and this is vest to you. That's a pretty awesome idea. Now, we don't have much time because of the technical difficulties, so I'm going to try to show you live demo of Vest, and we'll go as much as we can, and let's see how it goes. So I have here just a simple form, very simple user registration form, similar to what we just saw in the presentation, and it's nothing special, it's just a React form, and I added some input components just to save us time, and they have a few props that I created just so we can save the time. So I added pending so we can see that it's spinning. I added class names for validation results. So that, for example, error valid and warning, and it's orange, by the way. And I added a message property that allows us to see what is the error. So this is everything that I did here in the form, and we have a change handler that takes this, the new value and puts it in the state. So this is everything that we have. Now we're going to write a new validation suite, a new vest validation suite for that form. And it's going to be super easy, super readable. It's going to be separate from a feature form. It's going to be the best. Okay, so I opened a new file. I called it registration form suite. In hindsight, that's a very long name. That's going to be difficult to type over and over again. But let's do const registration form suite, and let's do import, create, test, and enforce from vest. No? Stop it, Copilot. From vest. Okay, cool. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add the data and initialize the suite. And I'm just rename it to create and take the data. And just to see if everything works correctly, let's do test, username is required. Okay, that's awesome. And let's do enforce data.username. And let's not do is not empty, let's do is not blank. Blank, okay. And if we type in the form, nothing will happen, obviously, because we do not connect it to React just yet. So let's edit here, and let's do, what is the name of the suite again? Yes, export. And let's go to the form. Now we have the change handlers, so let's do, let's run it with the new state. So let's take the next state, and we're passing it to the validation state. Now, what we want to do is also insert it to the React state, because we want the UI to update whenever we try to change the validation state. So, again, let's do .get. This gives us the current state of the validation state, and let's do set validation state. I must not use such long variable names next time. Remind me of that. But okay, yeah, I think that's it. It's connected right now. And what I want to do is show you the validation message as we type. So let's go here, and let's do message. And what we want to do is, yeah, we don't even need all that. Let's just do get message for username. And what's going to happen here, let's refresh. I'm going to type and you won't see anything, but if I remove it, you'll see username is required. That's all I had to do in order to connect vest to my form. This is pretty dope. Thank you. Now let's do a few more. Okay, time's good. Okay, let's do a few more. Let's add another one for username, and this is one cool feature. We can add as many tests as we want to any given field. So let's do username must be at least 3 characters long. And let's say longer than 3. Yeah, oh, 2, right? Yeah, longer than 3. 2. Now again, let's do the same for password, just because we can. Password is now blank, longer than or equals 5. Let's do 5 because it must be a strong password, of course. And let's connect password to our form as well. So I'm doing this, and let's connect password. And okay, well, already seen username must be at least 3 characters and password is required, but this is annoying, right? Because we hate it when we start typing inside of a form and suddenly all of the fields light up. That's pretty annoying. There must be an easy way to do that. Now, in schema validation, we have to filter out everything. We run the validation, but we filter it out. And in Vest, I think we should have something different. And what do we do in unit tests? Well, we say only. You only run this test. When you want to skip the others, oh, you say skip, right? Well, in Vest, you do the same. You only run the fields that the user is currently typing in, and that's what we need to do. So let's take the name of the current field. Let's say it's a string. String. Okay, you know what? Let's not type it. Let's not type it. And let's do only. No, not that only. That only. And pass the name of the current field. Cool. Now back in the form, all we have to do is pass the suite, and it will already tell us that something is missing. Let's pass the name of the field. And as I start typing, we'll see that only the validation for username is being run, and it's not just being skipped, as in omitted from the result, it's actually not running the validation for password. So I'll type my name, cool, and password, and it disappeared. Okay, awesome. But we also want to have some colors, and Vest can run on the server, it can run in the browser, so it doesn't know of your DOM nodes, it doesn't know of HTML, it doesn't know of CSS, so we need to give it a little help. And because Vest is not a UI library, I had to create a separate library for that, or a separate function, import class names from Vest class names. And this allows us to specify the class names that we want to show in every scenario, or validation scenario. And what we want to do here is const cn, we get a function back, and we call it class names, and we run it with registration form suite.get with the current validation result. Cool. And we say that if it's valid, we want to show valid, right? That was the class name that we chose. And if it's an error or invalid, we want to show error. And if it's warning, we want to show warning. Cool. And all we have to do now is connect it to the form by class name equals cn and username. Let's do the same for password. Cool. Now if I start typing, we'll see that username is red, just like that. And let's keep typing. And it's now green. And let's do the same in password. Awesome. Now we obviously want to disable the submission in case the validation is invalid. So let's also do that. So disabled equals not registration form suite dot is valid. Okay. So now it's invalid, and if we keep typing, cool. Yes, it's valid. Cool. Now, we also want to do the same for confirmation, and that's going to be super simple. Let's do one for confirmation, and let's do confirm. And the same for confirm, we're going to copy this one. And this is very difficult to do with different libraries, like schema validation libraries, that you have fields that depend on one another because, well, you're not in that field, so you have to climb up and get that value and everything. And here it's super simple because, well, you only work with the data. Again, you work with the forms, so confirm equals data.password. And just like that, we'll start typing and refresh. Start typing, password. Password, oh, confirm is not required. Passwords do not match. Sorry. Passwords do not match. Okay. And if I keep typing, passwords do not match, just like that. Okay, awesome. So we have that. Now, let's do some warnings because, well, in normal form validation, we have stuff like password strength. Now, I don't know of any other validation library that knows to do that, but you have throw-in validation or fail-in validation and non-fail-in validations, because when we do form validation, we sometimes have password strength that does not fail the submission. Submission should still go, but it should tell us that something is not in order. This is a warning, and tell me if you know of any other library that does it, because right now I don't know of any. And this is going to be, again, quite easy. We're gonna copy password, and let's say password is weak, maybe add a number, like that's going to help you. And let's do matches, and we're going to do some regular expression. Thank you, Copilot. And let's do warn. And we're going to take a warn from Vest, and just like that, if we type in username, it's going to be my name, it's going to be password, and already it's becoming orange and letting me submit, and you'll see that because if I start typing, you'll see that it's valid, even though it's showing me there is a problem. And now again, let's do something like that. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we have password one, and it's valid. it was valid even before that, and we could submit the form. Now, what if we have an issue that the username is already taken? Well, this requires going back to the server and then back to the client and doing async validation for a specific field. How do you do that? Well, again, in other places, in other libraries, that's quite difficult, but I want it to be as easy and as memorable as we can. And what I thought is, well, why not do it just as the way we do it in unit testing libraries by using async fields? So let's do another one for username. And let's say username is already taken. And it's going to be an async field. And I already wrote a server action. Let's see. Does user exist action? I created a React server action, which is a new feature in React. It's pretty awesome. And right here, I'm using Next.js server actions. And we can use that server action within Vest. And this means that if we try to run this validation both in the server and in the client, we don't need to write different code for it. We can actually use that same validation with the async code in the client, in the server, and React will take care of it, or Next will take care of it to make sure that we don't have to write any fetch code. So right here, I'm going to do does user exist action, and I'm going to put it inside of my suite. So let's do does user exist action. Let's take data.username and const res equals await blah blah blah, and let's say res is truthy, right? We're expecting that username not to be taken. Now, if we type, we won't see anything happening because, well, React is not reactive, unfortunately, so we have to tell it to update after the validation is completed. So let's do that. So right here, in the validation suite, we're telling it, well, when you're done, don't forget to set the state again. Okay, and just for you, I'm going to show a spinner just so you see what's going on. So let's do pending, and pending is going again to use is pending right from Vest. We're asking Vest, is the username still pending? And if I start typing, hopefully the username is already taken and nobody took it. We see the spinner, great, and we're seeing that it's, wait, the username, oh yeah, username is already taken. We're seeing that this user is already taken, and if I remove it or change something, we'll see that how many users are taken? Wait, I think I flipped it. Is falsy. It should be falsy. So my username is taken, and the other users' names are not taken. Awesome. Cool. We got 2 minutes, so I'm going to run through it. Again, we had some technical difficulty in the beginning, and I don't want to take any time from Tal, which has an amazing presentation. So I'm just going to show you, well, when I type, we're seeing that, well, I type and I type again, but we already know that the validation is failing to begin with. So what do we do? Like, why do we have the spinner again? Why do we go to the server again? And we don't need to go to the server again. Instead, Vest allows us to memoize the validation result, so we don't need to. So what we do here, we're going to do test.memo, and we're going to say memoize by the data.username. No, data.username. So as long as the username doesn't change, we're going to get the same validation result. And if I type, we're going to see the spinner and we're going to see that it's taken. And if I remove that number that I just added, I expect it to work immediately without any delay. You see? We just saw this happening. Now, we don't have much time again, but I will tell you, we can run the same code in the server, for example, in React server action. Just like that, we can write it as a static validation result, as a static validation, and serialize it back to the client. And this is the basic behavior of Vest. Now, just to conclude, I will tell you that Vest works with everything that you use. It works with TypeScript, React, Svelte, Remix, Solid, Quake, Angular, and actually there is a very nice new library for React, for Angular and Vest. Basically everything. You should totally give it a try and install Vest, check the documentation webpage, and well, if you want, I'd love it if you could give Vest a star to support Israeli open source. Thank you so much.